Jerry Reed wasn't a household name yet, but the day he walked into RCA Studios in Nashville, everything changed. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had been struggling for hours, frustrated that his top session musicians couldn't capture the magic of a song he desperately wanted to record. Nobody expected the scruffy, unshaven man from Tennessee to hold the room in his hands, to challenge the most powerful empire in music, and to emerge victorious without compromising a single note of his own vision. This is the story of a musician whose talent and courage quietly eclipsed a legend, and who taught an entire industry a lesson about respect, integrity, and the price of artistic control. The prelude to a session. By the spring of 1967, Elvis Presley was caught in the same trap that had haunted him for years. The king, already a global icon, was churning out film after film in Hollywood, most of which were creatively hollow and offered him little artistic satisfaction. He knew he was losing touch with the music that had made him famous, and his frustration was mounting. In February 1967, he had poured his heart into the How Great Thou Art sessions, giving himself completely to the gospel album, and it had reminded him of what true musical engagement felt like. But the desire for a major comeback single was still pressing, a hit that could prove he was more than a movie star playing dress-up. That spark arrived unexpectedly when he heard Jerry Reed's Guitar Man on Los Angeles radio. Something about the groove, the rhythm, and the raw authenticity of Reed's performance resonated deeply. It was exactly what Elvis needed to regain his artistic confidence. The plan was ambitious. Originally, RCA had scheduled a session for August 22nd to 23rd, 1967 in Hollywood, with Billy Strange overseeing the musicians. Elvis had personally requested a wide array of songs to be ready for recording, including We Call on Him, Ramblin' Rose, Brown-Eyed Handsome Man, After Loving You, and Guitar Man. Yet life had a cruel twist in store. An incident involving Richard Davis, one of Elvis's drivers, who accidentally killed a Japanese gardener, prompted Colonel Tom Parker to halt the session. Fearing legal repercussions and scandal, Parker ordered Elvis out of California, sending him immediately to Las Vegas. This abrupt change of plans delayed the opportunity to record Guitar Man, a song that had already captured Elvis's imagination and would ultimately demand the presence of its writer. Following the setback, Elvis returned home to Memphis, and plans were rescheduled for September 10th to 11th, 1967. This time in Nashville with producer Felton Jarvis fully in control. Jarvis, newly cemented in his role after narrowly avoiding being replaced by Billy Strange, had everything to prove. After the modest success of Love Letters and the acclaim of How Great Thou Art, he needed a single that would dominate the charts. The stakes were high, the pressure intense, and no one anticipated that the key to achieving it would be a 30-year-old musician fresh off a fishing trip, looking like anything but a star. Jerry Reed arrives and takes control. By the morning of September 10, 1967, the Nashville RCA studio was tense. Elvis Presley had been rehearsing with the A-team of session musicians, Harold Bradley, Chip Young, Charlie McCoy, Floyd Kramer, Buddy Harman, and Bob Moore for hours, yet nothing seemed to capture the spark he had heard in Jerry Reed's original recording. The song Guitar Man had a unique groove, a subtle energy that could not be replicated by conventional studio precision. Each take left Elvis frustrated, the musicians embarrassed, and producer Felton Jarvis quietly anxious. It became painfully clear that no matter how skilled the players were, they could not produce the magic of Reed's own performance. Someone in the room finally suggested the obvious, "Why don't we just get Jerry Reed?" Reed, at that moment, was far from a professional studio setting. He had spent the previous days fishing on the Cumberland River, completely detached from the world of chart success or celebrity music. When contacted, he agreed to come to the studio, but nobody knew exactly what to expect. When Jerry walked in, unshaven, wearing old clogs and smelling faintly of river water and fish bait, the room paused. Elvis, dressed casually but carefully, looked at him and said, almost in disbelief, "Lord, have mercy. What is that?" The contrast could not have been starker. The king of rock and roll, polished and rehearsed, and this wild man from Tennessee, appearing to have crawled straight from the woods. Despite the rough exterior, Jerry immediately commanded attention. His personality was infectious. He was confident, irrepressible, and wholly individualistic. He wasted no time asserting his approach, tuning his gut-string guitar in unorthodox ways, raising the B string a whole tone and lowering the low E. He prepared to play the song exactly as he intended. The seasoned Nashville musicians watched in awe and skepticism as Reed instructed them on how to achieve the rhythm, correcting the A-team at moments where their traditional technique simply couldn't capture the feel. For Elvis, this was transformative. The moment Jerry hit the first notes, the spark returned. His eyes lit up, and the energy in the room shifted. Suddenly, the session was no longer a struggle. It became alive. Reed coached, egged on, and guided the musicians through each take, creating a synergy that had previously been impossible. The session unfolded like a masterclass in musical leadership. Every stumble, every imperfect note was embraced rather than punished. Elvis fed off Reed's energy, Reed thrived off Elvis's enthusiasm, and the song began to resemble nothing less than the definitive version that would ultimately define Elvis's comeback. By the fifth take, the groove was established. By the 12th, Guitar Man had been captured as a vibrant, guitar-driven record that preserved Reed's artistry and empowered Elvis's performance simultaneously. That day, Reed wasn't just a guitarist. He was the heartbeat of the session, and it was clear to everyone in the room that the magic of Guitar Man was entirely his creation. The clash with Colonel Tom Parker. By the time the Guitar Man session reached its peak, the energy in the studio was electric. Jerry Reed's unorthodox playing, his guidance of the musicians, and Elvis's revitalized performance had produced something extraordinary. Yet, the triumph was shadowed by an inevitable confrontation with the business side of music. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, was notorious for his iron-fisted control over every aspect of the King's career, particularly when it came to publishing rights. The unwritten rule in Nashville, and Parker enforced it ruthlessly, was that any songwriter whose material Elvis recorded had to surrender half of their publishing rights. It was a practice that had enriched Parker and solidified his empire, and very few ever dared to challenge it. When Jerry Reed was approached about signing away half of his rights to Guitar Man, he froze for a moment. Then, calmly and decisively, he said no. He refused to compromise his creative ownership, recognizing that giving in would mean surrendering not just money, but the integrity of his art. The studio fell silent. Everyone understood the audacity of his decision. Here was a scruffy, relatively unknown musician standing up to Elvis Presley and the most powerful manager in music history, and no one expected him to walk away unscathed. Elvis himself, watching the scene unfold, was quietly impressed. He had spent years under Parker's strict rules, recording songs he had little interest in, and often seeing the profits and credit skewed away from the people who truly deserved them. Here, in that studio, he witnessed a rare moment of courage. Jerry Reed wasn't simply protecting his rights. He was making a statement. He had the skill, the timing, and now the leverage. He knew that without him, Guitar Man could not have been captured with the same vitality, and he used that knowledge wisely. The publisher, Freddie Beanstalk, tried every tactic he could think of, persuasion, intimidation, and appeals to loyalty, but Reed remained unmoved. "I don't need the money. Elvis doesn't need the money, and I'm making more than I can spend right now," he said. "Why don't we just forget we ever recorded this song?" Completing the magic, Guitar Man and beyond. With the publishing clash settled in Reed's favor, the session returned to its true focus: music. The atmosphere in the studio shifted from tense to energized as Jerry Reed fully took the reins, guiding Elvis and the seasoned Nashville A-Team musicians through Guitar Man. Reed's distinctive finger-picking style, unconventional tunings, and infectious enthusiasm transformed what had been a frustratingly stalled session into a dynamic, cohesive performance. Elvis, who had spent hours frustrated with attempts to replicate the song, was now fully engaged, feeding off Reed's energy and improvisational instincts. Mistakes were no longer failures. They became opportunities, giving the song a raw authenticity that studio perfection could never capture. By the 12th take, the track had reached its final form, a guitar-driven, vibrant record that perfectly blended Reed's individuality with Elvis's electrifying presence. But the work didn't stop there. The session flowed seamlessly into Big Boss Man, a blues standard that demanded a different kind of energy. Reed continued to dominate the room, coaxing the musicians to loosen their rigid techniques, pushing Elvis to roughen his voice for the blues, and encouraging him to embrace the grit and anger the song required. Felton Jarvis, the producer, relished the results, urging Elvis to let it all hang out as the music became louder, looser, and more alive than anything recorded in Nashville in years. By the 11th take, the song had been captured perfectly, each note alive with Reed's commanding influence. The session revealed how much a single artist's vision could elevate a room full of professionals. Jerry Reed wasn't just playing guitar, he was orchestrating the entire energy of the studio. In between takes, the musicians began to relax, their respect for Reed growing with each passing moment. The infectious joy he brought to the session made the music feel spontaneous and vital, a stark contrast to the precision-driven sessions of earlier months. Even Elvis, normally the center of attention, allowed himself to follow Reed's lead, adding subtle improvisations and playful nods to other influences, including a hint of Ray Charles's "What Did I Say?" Every take built upon the last, creating a snowball effect of creativity, collaboration, and sheer musical intuition. Next, the team approached High Heel Sneakers, a 1964 blues number. Again, Reed's guidance and charisma transformed the song from a simple cover into a dynamic, guitar-driven performance that highlighted Elvis's versatility and command. Even as the session pushed late into the night, Reed's energy never faltered, his influence remaining the driving force behind each take. The outcome of these 2 nights was more than just recordings. It was a revival of Elvis's artistic spirit, a rekindling of his connection to music that had been absent during years of Hollywood distractions. Jerry Reed had not only rescued a session, he had reminded everyone present of the transformative power of genuine artistry and integrity, aftermath, and legacy. When the Guitar Man session finally concluded, the results were undeniable. The record had a vitality and authenticity that no prior attempt could achieve, blending Jerry Reed's unorthodox guitar style with Elvis Presley's renewed energy and passion. What had started as a routine studio session transformed into a defining moment in both men's careers. Elvis, who had been struggling with the creative stagnation imposed by years of Hollywood films and formulaic recordings, felt invigorated. He had rediscovered the spark that had made him the king of rock and roll, and Reed had been the catalyst. The song was released in 1968, achieving the chart success everyone had anticipated. A #1 hit on the country charts and a solid position in the pop charts. More importantly, it became the cornerstone of Elvis's artistic comeback, setting the stage for his legendary '68 comeback special. For Jerry Reed, the session was equally transformative. Beyond the immediate recognition, he had achieved something far more significant. He had stood up to Colonel Tom Parker and refused to surrender half of his publishing rights. The audacity of his decision sent a clear message throughout Nashville and beyond. True artistry could not be bought or bullied. Reed's reputation as a guitarist, songwriter, and creative force grew exponentially. Songs like Tupelo, Mississippi Flash followed, cementing him as a distinctive voice in country music. His legacy extended beyond the session itself, demonstrating to generations of musicians that talent, integrity, and courage could coexist and even triumph over entrenched industry practices. The impact on Elvis's team and the music industry was equally profound. Session musicians who had been skeptical of Reed's methods found themselves in awe of his ability to control the room without force, inspiring a respect that lingered long after the final take. Felton Jarvis, the producer, had a renewed sense of purpose and confidence, while the recording reinforced the importance of working with the right artists in the right moment. Perhaps most notably, the episode became a lesson in the limits of Parker's control. Even the King's manager could not override genuine talent when backed by self-assured conviction. The legacy of the Guitar Man sessions extends far beyond its immediate commercial success. Jerry Reed's insistence on maintaining his artistic and financial integrity became a touchstone for songwriters navigating the treacherous landscape of the music industry. His work with Elvis remains a testament to the delicate balance of collaboration, respect, and creative freedom, a moment when a relatively unknown musician reshaped the trajectory of one of the greatest artists in history. Reed's courage, talent, and charm ensured that the story of Guitar Man would not be just a hit single, but a symbol of the power of artistic authenticity and the enduring influence of a man who refused to be sidelined. Jerry Reed didn't just play guitar that day, he changed the rules. By standing firm, refusing to compromise his rights, and insisting on performing Guitar Man his way, he not only helped Elvis reclaim his artistic spark, but he also taught the music industry a rare lesson in respect and integrity. The King may have been the superstar, but it was Reed's vision, talent, and courage that gave the session its soul. Without him, the song would not have had the same energy, the same feel, or the same place in music history. So, what do you think? Could you have stood your ground like Jerry Reed facing a legend and the most powerful manager in the business? Or would you have given in to protect the opportunity? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you were inspired by this story of courage, integrity, and raw musical talent, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more untold stories from music history.